Vaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prachadane Nirvasesha Shunyavani Asta Chadesha Tadane Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasri Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 29, Verse 10. Dusaha prashta viraha tivratapa duta subha jnana prapta chutaslesha nivritya kshina mangala. Dusaha, intolerable, prashta, from their beloved, viraha, separation, tivra, intense, tapa, by the burning pain, nduta, removed, asubha, all inauspicious things in their hearts, jnana, by meditation, prapta, obtained, chuta, of the infallible Lord Sri Krishna, aslesha, caused by the embrace, nirvritya, by the joy, kshina, reduced to nil, mangala, auspicious karmic reactions. Translation: for those gopis who could not go to see Krishna, intolerable separation from their beloved caused by intense agony that burned away all impious karma. By meditating upon him, they realized his embrace, and the ecstasy they then felt exhausted their material piety. Although Lord Krishna is the Supreme Soul, these girls simply thought of him as their male lover and associated with him in that intimate mood. Thus their karmic bondage was nullified and they abandoned their gross material bodies. Purport: Srila Vishnu Chakravarti comments upon this verse as follows. Here Sukadeva Goswami speaks in a peculiar way. He presents the intimate object the gopis attained as if it were an external idea, thus keeping its true nature seek it from outsiders, while at the same time he reveals to the confidential devotees well versed in the scientific conclusions of devotional service the internal meaning that is his real purport. Thus, to outsiders, Sukadeva says that Krishna gave the gopis liberation, but to the confidential hearers, Sukadeva reveals that when the gopis experienced separation from their beloved, there arose in them both immeasurable unhappiness and immeasurable happiness, and they gradually achieved their desired goal. Thus, the verse can be understood as follows. Because of their intolerable separation from their beloved, the gopis felt terrible agony by which they caused all inauspicious things to tremble. In other words, when people in general hear of the gopis' extreme agony and separation from their beloved, they abandon thousands of inauspicious things even as fearsome as subterranean fires of millions of universes or the powerful poison swallowed by Lord Shiva. More specifically, those who hear of the gopis' love and separation give up their terrible false ego and, thinking themselves defeated, are shaken. When the gopis meditated on Lord Achyuta, he became manifest and personally came to them, and they experienced great joy by embracing his body, which is full of transcendental love for them. The gopis also experienced great joy by exhibiting personal characteristics in the sense of identification appropriate to such love. That joy made all their good fortune, both material and spiritual, seem paltry by comparison. The implication is that when other persons see how happy the gopis became upon embracing Krishna when he manifested himself directly before them, these other persons feel that thousands of so-called auspicious objects are insignificant by comparison, including all the sense gratificatory pleasures found in millions of universes and even the supersensory pleasure of spiritual bliss. Thus, hearing of the gopis' distress and the joy that arose, respectively, out of their separation from the Lord and their union with them, anyone can get rid of all the reaction of his past activities, both sinful and pious. Vaishnavas certainly do not think that sinful and pious reaction can be destroyed only by being lived out, since, after all, neither separation from the Supreme Lord nor direct association with him are in the category of karma. This kind of elimination of karmic reactions occurs at the stage of bhajana for those who have come to the level of anartha-nivritti. And thus, the gopis thought of Krishna, the Paramatma, or supreme object of all love, as their paramour. Even though such a concept is ordinarily contemptible, the gopis realized Krishna in an even fuller sense than did Rukmini and his other queens, who thought of him most respectfully as their husband. That thinking of the Lord as one's paramour is superior to thinking of him as one's husband is proved by the fact that unbridled pure love is superior to domesticated love. And this idea is borne out by the following words of Sri Uddhava, Yaduscha Jams Vajanam Arya Patam Cha Hitva. These ladies of Raja abandon their families and their advanced religious principles, even though to do so is very difficult. In his pastimes on earth, Krishna often turns the most lowly things into the most elevated. As Bhishma stated, Krishna's pastime of acting as Arjuna's chariot driver was even more elevated than the pastimes in which he acted as a mighty king of kings. Vijaya Rata Kutumba Atta Totre Dritya Haya Rasmi Cha Sri Ekshaniye. I concentrate upon the chariot driver of Arjuna, who stood with a whip in his right hand and a bridle rope in his left, and who was very careful to protect Arjuna's chariot by all means. Similarly, in the Lord's appearance as Krishna, we see that normally inferior conjugal rasa becomes better than the normally superior mode of Shantarasa, as also the attitude of loving a paramour becomes superior to the loving exchange between legitimate spouses. And lowly gunja necklaces, red oxide and peacock feathers become better than the most excellent jeweled ornaments. But it may be objected, it is not fitting for the Supreme Lord to sport with women whose bodies have already been enjoyed by other men. This objection is replied to by the words beginning Jahu. The word Deham is used here in the singular form to indicate unity of category, even though the gopis are many. Some authorities say that by the power of Yoga Maya, these gopis' bodies disappeared in a way no one noticed, but other authorities say that the body refers in this context to the inferior body composed of the modes of material nature. Thus, by the prominence of the adjective guna mayam, it is understood that before the gopis heard the sound of Krishna's flute, their bodies had been twofold, material and spiritual, and upon hearing the flute, they gave up the material bodies which their husbands had enjoyed. We may analyze this as follows. When devotees begin prosecuting devotional service in accordance with the instructions of a bona fide spiritual master, they engage their ears and other senses in pure devotion by hearing of the Lord, chanting His glories, remembering Him, offering obeisances to Him, giving Him personal attendance, and so forth. Thus, the devotees make the Lord's transcendental qualities the object of their senses, as stated by the Lord Himself, Nirguna Mad Apasrayaha. In this way, the devotees' bodies transcend the material modes. Yet sometimes the devotees may take as their sense objects mundane sounds and so on, and that is material. Thus, a devotee's body can have two aspects, transcendental and material. According to one's level of devotional service, to that degree, the transcendental aspect of one's body, to the degree that the transcendental aspects of one's body become prominent and the material aspects diminish. This transformation is described in the following verse from the Bhagavatam. Bhakti pareshanu bhava viraktir anyatra chaisa trika eka kala prapadyamana sayatasnata su tushti pushti kshud apayonugasam. Devotion, direct experience of the Supreme Lord, and detachment from other things. These three occur simultaneously for one who has taken shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in the same way that pleasure, nourishment, and relief from hunger come simultaneously and increasingly with each bite for a person engaged in eating. When one achieves totally pure love of God, the material portions of the body disappear and the body becomes completely spiritual. Nonetheless, so as not to disturb the false opinion of atheists and so as to protect the confidentiality of devotional service, the Supreme Lord usually has His illusory energy exhibit the demise of the gross body. An example of this is the disappearance of the Yadavas during the Maushala Lila. Sometimes, however, to proclaim the excellence of Bhakti Yoga, Krishna will allow a devotee to go back to Godhead in the self-same body, as in the case of Dhruva Maharaj. We can cite evidence for this point from the 25th chapter, 11th canto, text 32. Yene me nirjita somya guna jivena chitta ja bhakti yogena manishto madbhavaya prapodyate. A living entity who conquers the modes of material nature which are manifested from the mind can dedicate himself to me by the process of devotional service and thus attain pure love for me. Here the Lord states that the defeat and destruction of that which is composed of the modes of material nature can be brought about only by the process of devotional service. Therefore, what we should understand from the present verse of the Bhagavatam is that the gopis who could not go to see Krishna had their inauspicious material bodies removed or burned up, while their auspicious spiritual bodies, far from being destroyed, simply grew more prominent because of the ecstasy the gopis felt by embracing Krishna and meditation. Thus their bondage was completely destroyed. By the help of Yoga Maya, they got free from ignorance and also from the prohibitions of their husbands and other relatives. We should not make the mistake of explaining this falling away of the gopis' body as being a result of their dying. As the Lord himself says, Yamaya kridata ratyam avanesmin vraja astata alabda rasa kalyanyo mapur madvirya chintaya. Some of those all-auspicious gopis could not directly join me in enjoying the rasa dance on that night in this Vrindavan forest, yet still they achieved my association by remembering my transcendental pastimes. By using the word kalyanya in this verse, the Lord implies, even though these gopis wanted to give up their bodies because of their husband's prohibitions and torment of separation from me, for them to die at the very beginning of the most auspicious festival of the rasa dance would have been displeasing to me and thus inauspicious, so they did not die. More evidence that the gopis who were prevented from going to see Krishna did not physically die is provided by the statement of Sri Sukadev's later in this canto, Ta uchur udavan pritas tan sandesh agatas smriti. Then the gopis replied to Uddhava, feeling satisfied because his message had reminded them of Krishna. Here we understand that the gopis speaking to Uddhava were the ones who had not had the chance to participate directly in the rasa dance because of being held captive in their homes. Thus, the conclusion is that they gave up their material bodies without dying. Parched by the intense heat of separation, their material bodies gave up their materiality and became purely spiritual, just like the bodies of such great devotees as Dhruva Maharaj. This is the meaning of the gopis giving up their bodies. The following analogy illustrates the statuses of the various gopis. By observing 7 or 8 ripe mangoes on a tree, we can ascertain that all the fruits on the tree are ripe. Then we can pick them all and bring them home when in due course the sun rays and other agents will make them fine-looking, fragrant, and delicious, fit to be offered to the king for his enjoyment. When the time comes for the king to make his meal, a discriminating servant can choose those fruits ready to offer him. From the appearance of the fruits, the servant can tell which are ripe in the middle, but still raw on the outside, and thus not yet fit for the king. By the application of a special heating process, these remaining fruits will become ripe in 2 or 3 days, and then they too will be ready to offer the king. Similarly, among the Munichari gopis who took birth in Gokul, those who completely gave up the materiality of their bodies and very early in life achieved pure spiritual bodies, were able to remain untouched by any other man. Thus Yogamaya allowed them to join the Nitya Siddha and other advanced gopis when they went to meet Krishna. Other Munichari gopis still retain some connection with the external material body, but even they, after being parched by the heat of separation from Sri Krishna, gave up the materiality of the bodies and assumed perfectly transcendental bodies, purified of all taint of contact with other men. On the night of the rasa dance, Yogamaya sent some of these gopis out behind those who had already gone out. Others who Yogamaya saw still had a slight amount of contamination she kept back to further purify with the heat of separation, and then she sent them out on some other night. After enjoying the pleasures of the rasa dance and other pastimes with Krishna, the Munichari gopis who had participated went back to their homes when the night was over, as did the Nityasiddha and other advanced gopis. But now, Yogamaya protected these Munichari gopis from the material association of their husbands. In other words, these gopis were devoid of any selfish attachment for husband, children, and so on. These gopis were thoroughly immersed in the great ocean of love for Krishna. Their breasts dried up so that they could not feed their infants, and to their family members they appeared to be haunted by ghosts. In conclusion, it was not unseemingly that the gopis who were previously in material association joined in the rasa dance. Some authorities, however, maintain that the gopis who kept back in their houses, did not have children. According to them, whenever such words as apatya, children, are used in the verses yet to come, these words refer to the children of co-wives, to adopted children or nephews and nieces. Translation: for those gopis who could not go to Krishna, intolerable separation from their beloved caused an intense agony that burned away all impious karma. By meditating upon him, they realized his embrace, and the ecstasy they felt exhausted their material piety. Although Krishna is the Supreme Soul, these gopis simply thought of him as their male lover and associated with him in that intimate mood. Thus their karmic bondage was nullified, and they abandoned their gross material bodies. So there's a very elaborate purport on this, not only by Vishnu Chakravarti, but even Jiva Goswami, Sanatana Goswami give extensive purports on this to show that actually this what appears to be like giving up their bodies is simply giving up the material aspect of their bodies. As Gunamaya Deham, they gave up that particular body, but obviously they developed spiritual bodies, and there's no idea of having a death since the Ras Leela was auspicious, and of course in Vrindavan none of these associates are subject to death. So only the material or impure aspects of those gopis who were almost on the highest level but not quite, those gopis were kept back by their husbands and parents, etc. And consequently, that separation burned up the last impurities. So that is mentioned here. Tivra tapa duta asubha. All the inauspicious elements were washed away or purified by the heat of, the intense heat of separation from their beloved, which was difficult for them to tolerate. So because of that separation, the last impurities were gone, and thus the so-called guna maya deha, the body associated with impurities, disappeared, and what was left was their pure spiritual body. So in this way they were able later to participate in the rasa dance with Krishna. So the one aspect of this course is that unless one is completely pure, one cannot associate with the Lord. Of course, generally one cannot go to the spiritual world or even participate in the pastimes with the Lord in the material world unless one is very qualified. But here we see that they were not yet on the highest level, yet they got a chance. And they became purified, and then they were able to directly associate with the Lord. So this happens during the pastimes in the material world, where the people who are almost qualified but not quite, they're allowed to enter into the Vrindavan, and then later on, by separation and association, they're able to purify themselves and attain the highest level and associate with the Lord directly. So this is the case here we see with these gopis who were separated from Krishna. So the separation created intensity of their feelings of love, and thus the impurities were dissipated by that. So we see this takes place not only on the highest level, but in the process of bhakti itself. The process of anartha-nivritti is a process of getting rid of the inauspicious elements, the asubha elements. How does it take place? It takes place by the performance of sadhana bhakti. Through sadhana bhakti, the inauspicious elements take place. How does that happen? Because the attraction for Krishna grows. As the attraction for Krishna grows, the inauspicious elements disappear. The more one surrenders to Krishna, the less one surrenders to Maya. So, the same applies here. The more intensely they were attracted to Krishna by separation, then the last impurities were destroyed. So a simple principle. Of course, in this case, we don't say it's exactly sadhana. It's not a practice as such. They're already on a higher level. And the intensity was caused by that separation from Krishna. That produced the intensity of their attraction for him, and thus the impurities were destroyed. And then they were fully qualified to join the Lord. So externally there may not be any difference. No one can detect any difference in these gopis. They don't look any different from the previous day or the next day or the next day. But the difference was in there, the bhava for the Lord. It was stronger as a result, and the impurities were all gone. And thus they were able to associate directly with the Lord at a later point. The qualification is the highest for associating with the Lord. There can be no material impurities at all, and then one is allowed to associate with the Lord. In this case, of course, as I said, there's no differentiation. They had bodies which had slight material contamination, and then they were purified, but the body was actually the same body. In terms of people doing sadhana in the material world, we have a material body which can be quite different from your spiritual body. So we may have a male body here, and then in the spiritual world you get a gopi body, so quite different. Or you're in the material world here and you're an old person, and there you become a young person, a cowherd boy or whatever. So the body's not exactly the same, or somewhat similar, but not exactly the same. So there is difference between that material body, the shape, even the form of the body, etc., apart from the fact that it is material and subject to decay and death, etc. But the appearance may be quite different. And of course, if one goes to Vaikuntha, then one gets a four-armed form, which is quite different from one form in the material world. But then we get exceptional cases, as is mentioned here in the purport. Dhruva went to Dhruva Loka with a spiritual body, which is like his material body, and he had two arms, whereas technically he was with Vishnu form on Dhruva Loka, but he didn't have four arms, he had two arms. Again. So there are exceptional cases also of persons in the material world that may go to the spiritual world with exactly that same form. So this is all the arrangement of the Supreme Lord according to one's particular relationship with the Lord and what is a suitable type of spiritual body. Of course, in the Raganuga process, the process is speeded up by meditating in advance upon your spiritual body that you prefer, such as a Manjari Gopi or a cowherd boy, etc. Before one has even got to bhava stage, one meditates on that particular form as a sadhana, serving in that form. And this helps you attain that particular form internally, of course. So that's your Siddha Rupa or whatever. So the development of the spiritual body is according to one's particular bhava in relation to the Lord, how one wants to serve the Lord. If one chooses to serve Vishnu, obviously it's going to be a different type of body. If one serves Ramchandra, etc., a different body. If one chooses Krishna, then different body. And in terms of rasa, then with Krishna, the different types of bodies are also there. It may be male or female, or older, younger, or whatever, depending on particular rasa and type of service. So that all manifests. So even if one does not meditate on it during sadhana, but one develops a particular bhava, then as bhava develops and prema develops to maturity, the body will develop automatically anyway, and one develops a spiritual body. Why? Because one has a spiritual relationship with the Lord, and then one serves in that relationship in different ways. So to serve, one needs a body. So what body? It has to be a suitable body. If you're serving Krishna, you can't have 4 arms, obviously. So you need a 2-arm form. And it has to be a cowherd boy form if you're in Vrindavan. It cannot be a Dwarka form. So naturally, by concentrating on that relationship, the form will also develop, even if you don't do Raganuga Bhakti as such and concentrate on the Siddha Deha, etc. It'll naturally develop anyway. Maybe a little slower, but it will develop. So, in order to serve the Lord in the spiritual body, in the spiritual world, one needs a spiritual body. How do we serve the Lord? We do activities for the Lord, glorify the Lord. How do we do it? We need a body with senses. So that is produced by the Lord through His various Shaktis. His internal Shaktis manifest that body for the Jiva, suitable to his particular relationship. And then one can serve the Lord. When the Lord appears in the material world, according to his, when he comes as avatar, then this gives an opportunity, a special opportunity for the devotee to associate with the Lord. And here we see they weren't quite perfect, yet they got the association. And through the separation, then finally they got to the highest level. So that's the case of some of the people who have done sadhana. They get a chance to join the pastimes of the Lord when He appears within some material universe, and then they get their perfection. Others may already got perfect, and with this material body, they got to prema stage, so then they can associate directly as sadhana siddhas with the Lord in some universe or in the spiritual world also. So in this way, they can join the Lord directly with their spiritual body, with no getting rid of their material impurities at all. In any case, this provides a chance for some jivas to associate with the Lord and reach the highest level by this type of method here.
Like a sadhana, the 3 types of gopis, and one gopis are nitya siddha already. And we see that from the example of Gopakumar, he didn't participate in Krishna's pastime. Directly he went from material world to the spiritual world. He's exceptional, you can say.
Well, it was not exactly, it was also material world.
He was in material world, he didn't participate in Krishna's pastime in the material world.
Not in the present, then he went to the spiritual world, but then he came back to the material world, and more or less he identified with those pastimes also.
He came from Vaikuntha. But after reaching to the Goloka, he didn't come back again.
Yeah, he came back.
From Goloka?
And he talked to this other person who was there, Gopakumar. What was his name? The other, there's another devotee there, and he spoke to him.
I'm saying that Krishna is like waiting there in the boundary of Goloka Vrindavan. Krishna's waiting there. It's mentioned in Brihad Bhagavatam that Krishna's waiting there, and when he saw the Gopakumar and he was embraced,
But he's told this whole story to another person who we met, a Brahmana, in the forest in Vrindavan afterwards. So he came back to the material world again.
It's like, sometime some materialistic person, they also explain that, so we are doing some meditation, we go to the spiritual world, again we come back. The meditation. It's becoming like this, we are coming back again here. Although maybe we are not having a spiritual body, but with the material bodies we can go to the spiritual world.
Well, he had a spiritual body, so that's not a problem. Anyway, he's an exceptional case also. He had a spiritual body, he got a spiritual body. And when he got to Vaikuntha, even then he had a spiritual body.
Another example, like in Maharaj, here he said like a Tibra Tapa Dota Shubha. For the gopis, Shubha means inauspicious. But we see this, although this gopis almost perfect, but what is the question of Oshubha for them, means inauspiciousness?
Well, that means they still had some impurity. And that's why they couldn't associate with the Lord. The others were pure. Most of them were pure. There was some who were on this stage through sadhana, and then they attained bhava and like that. But they weren't the highest level. So in bhava stage, you can meet the Lord, see the Lord. And some of the elements of rasa, sattvika bhavas are there, but it's not, there's still some impurity there. And then prema, no impurity.
So can you say that one more thing, like, so those who take birth in Gokula, that part, do they have material body also then?
Well, we can say because they have this impurity, then we'd say they did have a type of material body because of these impurities. And they were on a bhava stage, not on prema stage.
Then how can we say that the Goloka part, that when Krishna
Well,
appeared...
this is exceptional cases, when he's in his pastimes here in the material world.
No, what I'm saying that, see, we say that when Lord come, he bring his dhamma also.
Yeah.
So so those who are living in the dhamma means everyone has a special body.
No, you see demons come into there. Agasura, he got a spiritual body.
But demons come for the temporary, only two.
Yeah. So these ones were there, and then they developed spiritual bodies. And so exceptional cases. Almost pure, and then they got absolutely pure bodies.
From this verse we understand that as one keeps practicing devotion, they get spiritualized. But in this material world, as we practice, the possibility of spiritualization, how far it is, because we are always affected by the three modes of material nature.
Well, as one progresses, it's less and less, and if one gets prema in the material world, then there's no contamination at all. So when there's 100% attraction to the Lord, then there is no contamination at all. One may have a body affected by material world or whatever and subject to death, but spiritually speaking, one has also a spiritual body at that point, which is unaffected completely. And then one separates from that body.
So because of that, we cannot able to gather some point, some discussions from the books or temples. So the gopis, I have not heard that gopis was constructed the temples or the books, written books
Gopis
for the
writing
world.
books.
Because many acharyas, they have come and they have given many books and the temples, and they have constructed temples. Rupa Goswami also, they have constructed the temples, and he written books and he written nectar of devotion, everything. But the gopis, they were not did any handwork books.
Books? Well, the gopis are direct associates of the Lord, so they're not doing sadhana or giving instructions on sadhana at all. They're directly participating in pastimes with the Lord, as are all people in the spiritual world. So whereas acharyas in the material world are giving us instructions so we can advance in devotional service. Now, of course, those acharyas also, like the 6 Goswamis, were also manjaris in another form, but they took the form of acharyas to teach devotional service, just as we have some avatars like Vyasa writing scriptures, etc. But though the gopis in the spiritual world, their function is simply to serve the Lord eternally and give Him pleasure. So then there's no aspect of giving instructions in the material world or building temples, etc.
So which means we can understand that only when Krishna is there, so everybody will be, everybody has a chance to perform the sadhana bhakti, and because he is not there, that is why acharyas is giving the books, through the books they are teaching. So we can understand that, because when Krishna took personally avatar, and in many avatars, at that times the gopis and the senior devotees, they are pure devotees, they are because of them, at least the sadhana bhakti will be remain in this world. And because Krishna left the world, so again the impurity started coming into the earth, and people are becoming more impious. That is why the acharyas is very particular about the returning books, everything.
Yeah, I suppose you can say that. Well, we say that in the spiritual world, there's no acharyas or whatever, because the acharyas are part of the pastimes of the Lord, and there's no material world, so we don't have to instruct anybody about doing sadhana. And when Krishna comes to the material world, similarly in Vrindavan or Dwarka, there's no need to really instruct any of these people because they're already pure, but they may give instructions, as Krishna gives instructions to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, or Krishna gives to Uddhava in the Bhagavatam also. So Krishna may give instructions, and then Uddhava may give instructions to somebody else or whatever like that. That may also happen.
Maharaja, also, what is the life of the people who killed by the demons? Because Srila Prabhupada in his books, he written that at any time in this world itself, there may be a government may announce to stop your religious activities. So there is a highest possibility for this. So Srila Prabhupada written this. So what is the life for the people who killed by the demons?
What is the life of the...
Because...
If someone is killed by a demon, what happens to him? Any demon.
So
anytime.
what is how...
Anybody gets killed, they take another body.
And they can able to progress in the...
No. But demons kills a person, no. This happens every day.
Maharaja,
Well, that's okay. If it's got no, but if the demon killing him is not, that doesn't do anything for him in terms of his advancement.
Maharaja, we can say that the Murti only has to be worshipped, the Krishna's form only has to be worshipped in the temple and not the human beings' forms, because I recently heard that the Sai Baba is a form of Tadatreya, like that.
Form of?
Is the other avatar of Tadatreya, like that.
That's somebody's idea, not scriptural.
Thank you, Maharaja.
Maharaj, we see here, like, some gopis, they are not able to participate in Krishna's pastime. So because of this, Tivra means intense separation made them pure. Okay, so in the material also sometimes the sadhaka, they try to perform the devotional service. Take the example of like a new devotee, he's trying to chant his Hare Krishna mantra or try to perform the devotional service. Because of the obstacles, he is not able to do the way he like to do. Because of the obstacles he is facing, the way he like to do, he cannot do. Obstacles he is facing. Yeah, he is facing. So can you say that this obstacle is the instrument to purify him in the material world also?
Well, they can, and if you have the right attitude. And then one develops a determination to conquer them. Some people become discouraged and stop bhakti also. So it can go either way. It depends on the attitude of the person.
But in the beginning, maybe faith is not so strong. When that person gets some obstacles, because because of his not being strong, he might again turn back to his material life.
Yeah, so that's his anarthas. It's not that Krishna's putting them there to help him advance. It's just because he does have weaknesses and anarthas, therefore he goes back.
Yeah.
It's not that it is arranged for his advancement. But one who's a little stronger, then he utilizes those situations to become more determined and overcome them. One who is weaker will not.
तत्र श्रीमद्भागवत